Welcome everyone to another episode of Fate Grand Order Servant War Room. This is Holy Grail, and I'll be discussing how your favorite servants would handle an actual Holy Grail War. Because you never know. Maybe one day you're walking down the street and BAM! Kick down a well. For this video, I will be discussing none other than the master of defensive battles, the Spartan king, Leonidas. Leonidas is a 2-star Lancer servant in FGO. He serves the role of a defensive taunter that pretty much just tanks the enemy for several turns as the rest of your team does other things. Whatever you want. Leonidas has a good amount of appearances in FGO. While he does show up in several events, when it comes to the actual story, he appeared twice, once in the Roman Singularity as an enemy and in the Babylonian Singularity as an ally, his most prominent role being in Babylonia, where he trained and defended the wall against the endless assaults of the demonic beasts. But how would Leonidas fare in a real Holy Grail War? Leonidas is sort of a hybrid between a bodybuilder and a chess player. He's all about training and improving one's body, but he's actually quite an intellectual capable of executing impressive military decisions. Despite that, he mostly only shows his recklessness and aggressive-like behavior due to his Spartan origins. As such, you would expect him to be quite difficult to handle, since he's pretty much going to act as a drill sergeant for the duration of the war. Well, not quite. While he'll definitely try to train you, since a healthy body equals to a sound mind, he's a relatively chill so long as you're not rude to him or insult Sparta. Basically, so long as you don't act like a dickhead, you'll find Leonidas to be quite cooperative. Leonidas' stats are a bit questionable. While he has good strength and endurance, his agility is quite low for a Lancer. However, in his particular case, the low agility doesn't matter too much, since Leonidas' fighting style is defensive in nature, and rather than running at enemies, he'll be waiting for his opponents to come at him. As for his skills, Leonidas has 4 skills, 3 of which are defensive and 1 is supportive. For his defensive skills, Leonidas has Magic Resistance, rank C. Leonidas naturally resists Magecraft. At his rank, he can negate weak spells while resisting medium ones. However, stronger spells cannot be stopped by this skill. This means that technically even a master could kill Leonidas with Magecraft. That is, if they have something in their arsenal like Rin's gems. He also has Rearguard Pride, rank A, a unique skill to Leonidas. Basically put, the more disadvantaged this situation is for Leonidas, the more powerful this skill becomes. This skill pairs really well with his Noble Phantom, but I'll talk more about that when talking about his Noble Phantom. For now, simply know that the worse the situation is for Leonidas, the more powerful he becomes. And his last defensive skill, Battle Continuation, rank A. The owner of the skill is able to keep fighting even after being dealt a fatal wound. In the case of Leonidas, he is too stubborn to simply go down after being killed, and unless his core is destroyed or decapitated, he can keep fighting indefinitely. As for his support skill, Warrior's Warcry rank B, it's a skill that works similar to Charisma, except that while Charisma is a passive skill, Warrior's Warcry is a skill that Leonidas has to actively use. Leonidas only has 1 Noble Phantom, but it's a surprisingly powerful one. Thermopylia Enomotia. It's a defensive Noble Phantom in which Leonidas summons 300 Spartans. They will protect not only Leonidas but also his master, enduring any attack thrown at them. Should all 300 Spartans fall, Leonidas will be the last to endure the attack, after which a counterattack will be sent at the enemy, its power growing the more Spartans endure the attack. This means that this Noble Phantom shines the most when against powerful Noble Phantoms that can clear most if not all 300 Spartans, but not powerful enough that it can take down Leonidas. In addition, this defensive Noble Phantom doesn't need to wait for the enemy to attack. Leonidas can just summon 300 Spartans to try and bait an enemy's anti-army Noble Phantom, which should by all logic defeat Leonidas. However, thanks to Leonidas' skill, Rearguard's pride, even anti-army Noble Phantoms can be stopped. Yeah, Leonidas is pretty much playing 4D chess against his enemy. His army should by all logic lose to an anti-army Noble Phantom, but his skill makes it so that they can actually survive it and launch a counterattack at the enemy. Overall, Leonidas seems to be a pretty competent servant that shines the most when fighting stronger opponents, but against weaker enemies he feels very lackluster, since most of his skills and even Noble Phantom don't have much use against weaker enemies. Protector. Leonidas is a defender at heart. While he might be reckless at times or act like a barbarian in combat sometimes, he is a defensive by default and shines best when fighting to protect someone or an area. So setting up a base and then having him act as a god is a viable option, so long as the enemies don't have an anti-fortification or higher Noble Phantom. Leonidas should be able to stop most attacks thrown at your base. Underdog. Leonidas' skills and Noble Phantom shine the most when fighting stronger opponents. This means that even if you find yourself in a Holy Grail, where servants such as Artoria are present, you shouldn't just give up. Leonidas' skills and Noble Phantom are perfect for these unfair situations where you're facing very powerful servants. Lackluster versus weak enemies. While you might shine against powerful enemies, against weaker enemies, Leonidas might feel like he has nothing except for his battle continuations. Enemies such as Kojiro are particularly nasty for him, as they are actually physically weaker than Leonidas and don't even have a Noble Phantom, but their skills are so ridiculous enough that they can kill Leonidas out of nowhere. Weak against ranged. While Leonidas does have his Noble Phantom to stop ranged Noble Phantoms against simple attacks such as arrows or magecraft, Leonidas does not have that many options against ranged, leaving him a bit of a sitting duck. He does have his shield though, so he's not completely defenseless. Drill Sergeant. While normally training one's body for a Holy Grail War is useless since you're just a human, in my opinion, every little resource has to be used when your life is on the line, and Leonidas will certainly help train your body so that you can escape a bad situation, at least for just 1 or 2 more seconds, so that Leonidas can then come to your aid and protect you. As I mentioned before, you can bunker down with Leonidas acting as a god. So long as he's close enough to protect you from an assassin's attack, you should be pretty much safe for the entirety of the war. Setting your base to fit Leonidas' fighting style is also advised. Narrow and low corridors that restrict movement will benefit Leonidas' shield and spear fighting style. Gathering information on enemies is crucial. While you can't easily spy on them, you can sit at a safe distance to watch over a fight between servants, as you have Leonidas act as a bodyguard for you. Most servants won't be able to beat you if they try to engage on you. And even if they might be more powerful than Leonidas, Leonidas is best when fighting defensively, meaning that when you try to retreat, Leonidas' skill and Noble Phantom will be at their best to protect you and let you escape. You need to figure out who are the best matchups for Leonidas and the worst ones. Enemies with anti-army Noble Phantoms are ideal for Leonidas, but servants like Kojiro who can kill without a Noble Phantom are a nightmare for him. Ideally, you would watch from the sidelines as the stronger servants take out the weaker ones and then you face off the stronger ones. However, in the case of there being a servant who's too powerful for Leonidas to survive, such as Artoria, you will need to team up with someone else. So, in general, play passively unless you find out that there's someone who's too powerful for Leonidas to deal with. In combat, the best way to go at it is to try and bait the enemy's Noble Phantom by having Leonidas use his Noble Phantom. At seeing the army that Leonidas summoned, the enemy will be pressured to using their anti-army to deal with Leonidas, after which they will fall into his trap as his skill Rearguard Pride will stop the anti-army from obliterating his army, and afterwards he can launch his counterattack, which should in theory kill most enemy servants. Leonidas is a really difficult servant to evaluate as his potential is completely dependent on his opponents in the war. Against a strong opponent, Leonidas should win, but they can't be too powerful or he'll be overwhelmed. But if they're weak or not powerful, then Leonidas is going to have a hard time dealing with them. The best way to explain it is that Leonidas is a very average servant who, among other average servants, feels completely useless. But if you drop him in the middle of a war full of dragons, he suddenly transforms into a dragon slayer hero capable of overthrowing even God. That is how weird he is as a servant. Weaker enemies make him feel useless, stronger enemies make him feel powerful. As such, I'll have to give him an A. Given how in most Holy Grail Wars, most participants will try to win, they will try to summon powerful servants to aid them. So if you summon Leonidas, you should feel pretty safe, as so long as really high tier servants aren't summoned such as Gilgamesh or King Hassan, Leonidas should have a pretty good matchup against them. However, be wary of weaker servants as they can really trash on Leonidas since his entire build is only designed against stronger enemies. And that was Leonidas, a very interesting servant analysis. To be honest, this is the type of servant that I've always enjoyed when it comes down to the Fate series. Servants that are very circumstance dependent, right? It's not just, for example, Gilgamesh, who is just the most powerful servant and whatever abilities come out, doesn't matter, Gilgamesh just has a counter in it, Frugate of Babylon. No, it's more, here's Archer who can copy servant, who can copy Noble Phantoms, here's Hercules who, depending on his opponent, is either unbeatable or very easy to kill. And then there's Leonidas, who's completely dependent on how powerful his opponents are, right? Leonidas is pretty much a servant that in most Holy Grail Wars will feel like a very powerful servant that's very difficult to take down, then that can protect his master really well. But if he somehow ends up in a war that is full of just average and below average servants, then Leonidas himself will feel very average because most of his skills just don't even activate, right? I mean, his rear guard skill doesn't activate if he's against weaker enemies. His battle continuation will probably be irrelevant, will probably be very irrelevant against weaker enemies. And there's also his Noble Phantom, who, I mean, against anti-unit Noble Phantoms, it's not really that reliable, right? Because most anti-unit Noble Phantoms, for example, like, let's say Gable, right? I mean, even if Leonidas uses his Noble Phantom against the Gabolg's single anti-unit version, the army is not going to do anything. The Gabolg has already killed Leonidas, so Leonidas is really good against. So Leonidas' entire power is completely dependent on the situation at hand, and that's what I like about the Fate series. To be honest, it's not so much about, well, who's stronger and who's weaker. It's considering the situations and all of these circumstances, like what could be done to improve them, what could be done, what could result, like, does this servant have a chance if things happen? And a lot of servants that are considered weak could very easily win a war. Like, Matahari is the weakest servant, but that doesn't matter because if she ends up in the hands of, I don't know, Kiritsugu, probably doesn't matter. He can probably still win the war because he just kills everyone. So, servants being weak, being strong, doesn't matter because ultimately the masters have the most power, right? Leonidas might be very powerful, but if you put him in the hands of an incompetent like Shinji, like very likely command skills are going to be used for random things that are only going to make Leonidas weak. Shinji is probably just going to not use Leonidas properly, and these things are going to happen. That's the nature of a Holy Grail. But Leonidas was a very interesting servant to analyze. So yeah, this was a pretty fun video to make. Pretty fun to analyze Leonidas. I thought it would actually be a bit weaker. I don't know why. A part of my brain was just like, he's too defensive, like he doesn't. But no, his skills and Noble Phantom just work so well together that he's pretty much just a solid defensive servant. He's not offensive. Like if he ever has to go after someone, it's gonna be very difficult, right? If a caster bunkers down and Leonidas has to go after the caster, very likely the battle is going to go very badly for Leonidas. But when Leonidas is on the defensive, then it's pretty much like you will need anti-fortifications and above to beat him, or broken Noble Phantoms that are just very OP, let's put it that way. Anyway, that was Leonidas. I hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like, subscribe, comment. If you have any suggestions, please do give them. I do read your suggestions. Leonidas was already a servant that I already had in mind in making a video of, and I had only delayed it to make the Murasaki's video since the Valentine event had just come out. Anyway, till next time, bye.